Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to GTF Gabriel Talks Football. This is the start of 4 shows on the Barroom Network. After this, at 2 p.m. Central, it's Bar Down Hockey Talk. Vinny and Frank will talk about the Chicago Blackhawks' good start to their rebuilding season. And then at 7 p.m., Buffon 55 and Alyssa Barbieri welcome RJ Ochoa, who's going to be talking about the Cowboys and give us all the latest information that we Bears fans need to know to be better prepared to watch that game on Sunday, Bears and Cowboys. And then we end the broadcast day with Danny Shimon breaking down some Justin Fields tape. But we always begin with the absolute best, and that is Greg Gabriel, my friend. How are you, brother?
I'm wonderful. You know, we had a win, so I put you in a good frame of mind to start off the week. But you can stay that way for 5 or 6 days until the next game, and then we'll see what happens.
Right. But I saw that you tweeted out, although I'm going to have a fun show on Wednesday. So I absolutely
I'll tell you, last Sunday, that was a bitch. No Bears game Sunday, no Bills game Sunday. It's like, I got nothing to watch.
You didn't watch the Packers get blown away?
I watch football, but I mean, not teams that I cheer for.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And then what about Aaron Rodgers throwing his teammates under the bus?
Oh, my God. I couldn't believe that. Here's what's kind of weird is that Monday, when they have their press conference, he's saying, well, maybe this is pretty good. We're going to go into Buffalo as a big underdog. Maybe we could use that. Okay, and that's probably a pretty good statement to make. Then the next day he does his podcast and just throws everybody under the bus. Okay, now he doesn't go to the building on Tuesday. He's got to walk in there today. There are going to be some teammates that are really pissed off. And I don't care if if it's Aaron Rodgers or who the hell it is. I would be a bit surprised if he's pissing and moaning about the offensive line. You see a couple of Olay blocks on Sunday afternoon where he gets his ass kicked pretty good. I could not believe what I saw when I read that. I go, what the hell is he trying to do? You want to say it in private, that's fine. You want to say it to the guys, that's fine. You say it on public in a podcast that has a lot of hits to it, and automatically goes national. Really stupid. Ever since he's been taking those drugs from South America, he's kind of lost it.
Yeah, that ayahuasca stuff is not anything anybody should be taking. I don't care what they say about the benefits. I've never tried it, but from everything I've read and learned about it, that stuff is dangerous. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers has had a long history of alienating teammates, but this one is probably the most egregious to, as you said, saying on his podcast and basically say these guys should be benched, for their mental errors and stuff.
Well, how about looking in the mirror, look at yourself, because if you look at his play, he hasn't played very well. He's mad. He'll blame everybody else, but he's made poor decisions. He's held on to the ball too long. He's been inaccurate. Hey, Aaron Rodgers, you aren't perfect, my man.
Yep. I was listening to a news report, sports news report, and they were saying, does Aaron Rodgers have something against Sammy Watkins? Because he was open over and over again, and Rodgers chose not to throw to him. Well, I think it has more to do with Rodgers is not seeing the field well because perhaps the pass blocking is not as good as it's been. David Bakhtiari is still missing in action, and there's some other plot problems in that offensive line. So he's getting a little of that treatment that we've seen our quarterback here in Chicago get. Justin Fields is not having consistent good pass blocking. But let's talk about our Bears. How would you term this step in the progression of Justin Fields?
I'll go back a couple weeks ago, and I forgot what the hell game it was, but he played pretty good. And I said, maybe this is the first step. And then there's a bad game. We had the Washington game, and couldn't get things going. But he came back. And the good news, and I got to tell you, there's some people that say that, the Bears should have hired Brian Daboll. And I love Brian Daboll, and he's done an outstanding job in New York. But I think for this team right now, that was the right hire. Flus was the right hire. I think he's done a great job. And, I like when he's talking to the press, he's very, very real. There's no bullshit to him. Yep. And he tells you exactly what it is. Now there's information he's going to withhold, as he should, but just what comes out, what he says, how he says it, that's like, he didn't have to say, he goes, yeah, this week we're just going to have a lot of meetings and a walkthrough on Wednesday. He didn't have to say that, but he did. So he gave that information, and he told you exactly what they were going to do. He told you going into that mini buy what they were going to do. And he told you what they were going to do during it. And basically everything he wanted to accomplish got accomplished. And they had by far their strongest showing of the season on both sides of the ball.
A lot of people are saying about Luke Getsy, where has this been? Where have these pre-designed plays been? Do you think that it was a fault by Getsy not to have these pre-designed plays earlier in the season? Or do you think that this is more of kind of the natural growth of a quarterback and seeing what he can do and not do?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. And I think it's a combination of everything. Part of it is, and if I'm not mistaken, Green Bay had already played Baltimore this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Baltimore's got a pretty active quarterback. And that guy, Lamar Jackson, had some success against Green Bay. Who saw that on tape? The Bears saw that on tape. And so when you see the success that one team has with an athletic quarterback, you incorporate something similar into your game plan. And it also can throw your opponent off kilter a little bit because they're not necessarily, they're going on what you have done, not throwing in something new. So that part I think was good. But another part is he's starting to become more, what's the word I want?
Mature?
No, not mature, more confident in his knowledge of the system. And this is not an easy system. I talked to a friend of mine who is very, very, very familiar with this system. His familiarity came through the Rams. And I'm not going to say if he's still there or not, but, I wanted to know about the system because, McVay got it from Shanahan, and, the Rams are using it. The San Francisco 49ers are using it. Minnesota's using this system. Green Bay's using the system. The Bears are using this system. Denver's using this system. And it's all pretty much the same thing with, little tweak here, little tweak there. But I said, what makes it so difficult? He goes, it is freaking hard to learn. And he goes, and it's not just the quarterback, it's the quarterback and the receivers. I go, well, what makes it hard? It was the adjustments. Everybody's got to be on page. And there's so many site adjustments. And I've said that before. So if you're in an offense that has a lot of sight adjustments, if that receiver isn't confident in what his sight adjustment is supposed to be, you could have a guy who's a 4.31 or a 4.29 or a 4.45. He's still going to play 4.65 or 4.7 because he's not confident in what he's doing. So he's not going full speed. And then, your quarterback and your receiver got to be on the same page because they both have to be reading the same thing from the defensive back. So what I mean by sight adjustments is depending on what the defense is doing at the snap of the ball, not necessarily in your pre-snap look, but at the snap of the ball, that's going to determine what kind of route you run. So you might have 2 or 3 different options within one play for the receiver to run. And now you've got to have the quarterback and the receiver reading the same thing at the same time. And then the receiver's got to run the route correctly. So it just takes a lot of time for everything to connect. And this guy told me, he goes, that's why golf failed in LA. He just couldn't get it with that. And McVay finally put up the white flag and said, we got to get somebody else. And look at the problem Russell Wilson has had in Denver. Now, this guy's been an all-pro quarterback, arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the game, and he looks like a journeyman outcast in Denver. And it's like, you can't tell me he goes from here to here. Just the drop-off is just like that. This is a quarterback position where you can play until you're 38, 39 years old, unless you're Tom Brady, and then you can play till you're 100. But, it's just crazy. And a lot of it has to do with he's used to playing in one particular type of system. He probably thinks like that. And then he has to change all that in his mind, and it becomes difficult for him.
You asked me earlier if the Ravens have played the Packers yet. It's actually the Ravens have played the Patriots.
Okay.
And so Lamar Jackson rushed 11 times for 107 yards in that game. And
that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant the Patriots. And that so they saw the success that the Ravens had against the Patriots. My bad on the team name. And so, okay, well, if they did that, we should be able to do that because our guy's just as athletic.
What do you think about a lot of people are saying that Matt Eberflus, the rookie NFL head coach, outcoached Bill Belichick, one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coaches in many people's minds in NFL history?
I don't know if there's one thing I couldn't figure out that I've never seen Belichick do. And I worked with Bill for 8 years in New York. So, I know him well. And obviously when I worked for him, he had never been a head coach, but the way he handled the quarterback situation was just really weird.
Yeah.
And I think going forward, he's got to mend some fences.
I think so.
Because that thing, he basically tossed Mac Jones away, brings in the rookie, and the rookie, there's no question the rookie can throw the ball pretty good. Zappy can throw the ball pretty good. He's got a quick release. He's got no movement skills. None. He's a statue. And Jones isn't necessarily a mobile quarterback, but he's Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields next to Zappy. I mean, it's night and day. And they didn't move the ball the first 2 series, and he pulls them. That is just beyond me. And then the other guy, he gets 14 points on the board pretty quick. That part's good. He stunk the rest of the game.
Sure did. He sure did. Now, Belichick did tell the media that was a pre-planned, that they were going to put Zappy in at a certain point. It just unfortunately happened after an interception. But I doubt.
I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. Greg, tell me why you don't believe it.
Because the guy getting all the reps during the week was Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been the number one and been fairly successful as the number one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's a first-round pick. Now, yeah, you don't take away from the fact that the guy went in, but did Jones look terrible? The worst thing Jones did in that game was kick Jaquan Brisker in the nuts.
Yeah, what about that play? Because this looks like it's on purpose to me.
Oh, damn right it was on purpose. When you see it from the other side, he's looking right at it. Oh, I got a clear shot here.
That's exactly right. Look at this. It's like, here, have this for getting next to me. And then the way he gets up and tosses the ball in Brisker's direction was such a sign of disrespect. You just got him in the Jules area, and it looked like just a total unsportsmanlike. I wish they would have thrown the flag in there for taunting or kicking in the balls or whatever.
I tweeted out and I go to my friends at the NFL, their Twitter account, that Mac Jones better be fined for this, or your fine system's fucked up.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did that. And
it got a lot of play, got a lot of retweets and stuff. So, but I'm sure the Bears can send that clip to the league office. The league office watches that, and they had Pennell had that cheap shot at the end of the game after the Tyler Gordon interception. That's going to cost him. Fine, sometimes have a little bit to do with how much money you make and if you've been fined before. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say that hit is going to cost him somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Do you think that was a legit call?
It was a legit call. Did he actually do it on purpose?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. And Aikman mentioned it in the broadcast. It's kind of like in the heat of the moment type thing. Mm-hmm. But it was the right call. But that one's he got ejected from the game. It's going to cost him money.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of a ticky-tack, and I tweeted out that Matt Eberflus should write a letter to the NFL officials complaining about the lack of unsportsmanlike penalties not being called when Justin Fields is involved. There were two instances. There was one when he went out of bounds. He was clearly out of bounds. A couple of steps.
He hit a good yard out of bounds.
Yes, exactly. And then there was the sidearm throw where he gets pancaked. I think
between two guys.
Exactly, between two guys. And I'm like, why is that not a penalty? And it was a brilliant play by Justin Fields. And you talk about courage. This guy showed it in spades here. Just unbelievable play. And he cocks that ball because he was afraid it was going to get intercepted and completes it. Now, I think here in the subsequent follow-up replay, you see that hit where he gets pancaked by two guys. You see, he's asking for the officials for a penalty, and they're just kind of like ignoring him. I don't get it, Here it is. It's like, oh.
Yeah, there's 1-2 steps by both of them.
Unbelievable.
I mean, should have been a penalty. On that type of thing, they got a touchdown. If there was not a touchdown, I bet you the flag would have been thrown.
Okay.
But at the same time, when you get a penalty like that on a touchdown play,
mm-hmm.
then the penalty yardage gets marked off on the kickoff. So instead of kicking off from the 35-yard line or 30-yard line, they're kicking 15 yards farther upfield.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously you're going to get a touchback out of that. So what some teams do, though, when you get a situation like that where you got a penalty on the kickoff and the ball's moved up,
mm-hmm.
they do a blooper. First of all, your team's 15 yards farther downfield to start, and they'll do a blooper that they hope can land, inside the 10-yard line, and then they're right on top of the guy, and you can pin them back inside, say, the 15-yard line.
All right, we've got to talk about the play of the rookie cornerbacks. After Jaquan Brisker gets kicked in the nuts, 2 or 3 plays later, he comes up with an outstanding interception. There he is circled there. I think this is kind of a 3 deep zone. He quickly makes the play on the ball, makes the one-handed interception. This guy is got All-Pro written over, a future All-Pro written all over him.
No question. He's got great. My belief going back, 25 years, is that there's 2 positions on defense that it's imperative that you have top instincts. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about that for a second. But the one position is safety, the other position is inside linebacker. Mm-hmm. And you could talk about instincts, put it in a more simplified way. Is he an anticipator or is he a reactor? Mm-hmm. Okay, an instinctive guy anticipates. And so he's thinking ahead, so to speak, where a reactor sees it, then makes his reaction towards a play. The difference can be quarter second, half a second, whatever, but maybe even a little longer than that. But it can be the difference between making a big play like that or not getting the interception, for a linebacker making a play at the line of scrimmage or maybe after a 1-yard gain versus a 3 or 4 yard gain. So you always look, especially I do, and this is the way I was taught, is that at those positions, you're always looking for very instinctive players. And some guys, a perfect example, Danny Trevathan. Danny Trevathan was not a fast guy.
No.
Very, very instinctive. Danny Trevathan was like a 4.8 guy. Mm-hmm. And playing at a time when you'd rather have a 4.6 guy playing inside. Mm. But he had such good instincts. And another guy, Lance Briggs. Lance Briggs was 4.7.8. But he played 4.55 because he was so damn instinctive.
The other young cornerback who I was so glad to see get a pick, because I'm sick and tired of people on social media saying, we should have picked George Pickens instead of Kyler Gordon. Well, Kyler Gordon has, as you have said, Greg, this guy is playing well. He's had some growing pains, but he's getting better and better. And you're all in on Kyler Gordon, aren't you?
I'm all in on Kendall Vildor too. All of a sudden, nobody's thrown on Kendall Vildor.
How about
it? Yeah, Kyler Gordon needed to play. We could talk about another guy in a second, Braxton Jones. It's the same thing. Kyler Gordon came out of school early. Okay, he was a 1-year starter at Washington. Was a rotational player the year before that. Another guy with great instincts. Mm-hmm. Good speed, not great speed. Now, he gets run down on that play, but the guy who runs him down was the fastest guy at the combine, ran a 4.27 or a 4.28. So, when you get caught from behind by that guy, it's okay. Because he's easily, difference in time is at least 1/10 of a second. Mm-hmm. But, Gordon was going to get better. First of all, I think the last 3 games he's played well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But he gets better because he's been between preseason and now he's played 10 games, 9 games, and he's getting used to things. He's seeing different types of offenses, different types of route concepts. He's become more experienced. It's almost to the point where he's not a rookie anymore. Mm-hmm. Almost, and so you start playing with more confidence. And he got picked on early in the year, but the last few weeks he's played really, really well.
Yes, man. And another guy that played really, really well, and after he scored a touchdown, he went like this, basically saying, pay me, and that's Roquan Smith. Do you think that Roquan Smith is now settling into this weak side linebacker role and that we can anticipate these big plays happening more frequently for him and costing the Bears a lot more?
I don't know if it's going to. I think they'll eventually come to a deal. See, there's a key here. First of all, he doesn't have an agent, and that's a mistake on his part.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Okay. I think it's a huge mistake. But he already showed his hand a little bit during the preseason. Mm-hmm. And an agent would say, don't say that, and he already said it. And what he said was, they talked about, well, what if they franchise you? He goes, hell, that's a lot more money I'm making right now. I'll sign that.
That's right. He did.
Okay, that's a little over $18 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people are saying, well, they should trade him at the deadline. Why? You got him. Even if you don't get a deal, you franchise tag him next year. It's $18 million. They got the money, to do that. What's the problem here? You're not going to trade him. I mean, so some of the things that people come up with, Monty, they're going to trade Monty. I can't say. I don't see the Bears trading maybe one player, maybe trading away one player. And as far as players coming in, I'm going to say right now, 0. Mm-hmm. And first of all, the media makes a big deal about the trade deadline. The league, it's a yawner.
It's always been.
Okay, I would bet that. Well, I know I don't think there was 10 deals on total on the trade day deadline. My whole entire time working in Chicago, the last couple years there's been a few deals, but there's never more than a handful. Mm-hmm. And some are, where did people get the idea that Carolina is going to have this fire sale? First of all, I know Scott Fitter very, very well. We worked in New York 20 years ago, better than 20 years ago. And we worked for a number of years together. He's a very good football guy. McCaffrey, first of all, he got a ransom for that. Mm-hmm. That was a great trade for his part. The guy, he's an older running back now. He gets hurt every year. He can't say that's the guy you move, but you're going to move a guy like DJ Moore, who's like in the first or second year of an extended contract. Mm-hmm. You trade him and you get hit with a $14 million cap penalty right off the bat. Mm-hmm. That isn't going to happen. He's not getting traded. Right. Robbie Anderson was a cancer in the locker room. So you get rid of that.
You're on the sidelines.
Yeah. I don't know where people come up with this stuff. It rarely happens. They just, it's more, like I say, it's more of a media driven type thing than an actual event within the National Football League. The NFL is not the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL, where trade deadline means a lot. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of buying and selling going on in those sports. It doesn't happen in football, and it'll never happen in football. And part of it is the salary cap and the implications that you add to the salary cap.
Right. Well, and everybody is, talking about Quinn and, he's got a lot of money left on his contract. So if the Bears were to trade him, they'd have to eat a lot of that money and so forth. But it was interesting to me, Greg, that Ryan Poles has demonstrated to me that he's got big balls. Before a Monday Night Football game against Bill Belichick and the Patriots in Foxborough, he decides to have a fairly impromptu press conference. It was announced 3 or 4 hours before the game that he was going to meet the media, but everybody was wondering why would he do it now? Why would he do it here? And in that press conference, he basically said, I have all the confidence in the world with my draft picks. I see Justin Fields developing. And a lot of people in the media and people in social media were snickering when they were seeing these quotes come out on social media saying, this guy has no idea what kind of a terrible team he's built. And then the team goes out there and proves him correct in every way imaginable. Have you ever experienced a GM with the brass balls that Ryan Poles has? I loved it. Ryan Pace would hide for the 17 weeks of the season.
Well, to be fair, although most GMs don't say a word once the first game starts.
That is true. You're
okay,
right.
They're not all of them. Now, the exception is if something happens, you got a trade, you get a huge injury, something like that, where not only does the coach have to speak, but you got to speak. But during the season, the thinking is that during the season, the head coach is the spokesman for the franchise. And during the offseason, the GM's the spokesman for the franchise. And so they stay out of it. In fact, I when I was doing stuff for the Score, and there was this goes back to Nagy's first year, and they had a lot of success. They got in the playoffs that year, and I wanted to have Howie Roseman on. I was doing like when they had a late game, I would do the 9 to 12 slot with a co-host on a Sunday morning. And so I wanted to have Howie on. And Howie said, during the season, I can't do it. He said, and he goes, as much as I'd want, because I work for Howie and we're good friends. He says, as much as I'd want to do it for you, he said, the Philadelphia media would be really pissed because I won't talk to them during the season. And I got it, because that's he's got a way of doing things, and that's the way it is. Now, Ballard did come on. Ballard is a little bit more susceptible to things like that, again, depending on the situation. But other guys that I know and I work for, Jerry would have little impromptu 15-minute Q&As, usually on a, we had our box and it was over on the media side, not the news media side, but where the television media is and the radio media is. That's where our box was. It was right in between the replay official. Their box was right next to ours. Joniak at there was on the other side. And then you had the TV people on the other side of Joniak. And he'd have little get-togethers with a few media here and there, for 15 minutes before a game, maybe an hour and a half before a game. And he'd do that, and there'd be stuff on the record and off the record. But for the most part, most GMs just stay out of it. They talk to the coach, but they let the coach be the voice.
Yeah. And, that's understandable and probably a good point, but I wouldn't mind seeing the league maybe take a page out of what Ryan Poles did and make the GM a little bit more available throughout the season. The coach is always going to be the coach. He's going to have at least 3 press conferences during the week. But if the GM could have quarterly meetings with the media, that I think would help fans better understand his thinking on certain things.
But let me ask you this, just for the sake of discussion, argument, or whatever. What do you want him to say?
I know you were going to ask that.
The coach is telling you what's going on the field.
Yes.
And the GM, in all fairness, the GM has nothing to do with what's going on the field. He has to do with the players,
yes, but
not with how the game's being played.
It's a good point, Greg. You're not going to say, yeah, I know you've been out scouting. Who do you like? Who you been watching?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's not going to tell you that.
Exactly.
And so it's, oh, yeah, we brought in 3 guys every Tuesday. We bring in 3 to 5 guys for a workout. And, oh yeah, that's big news. It's on the waiver wire. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
So, and they only do that just to, sometimes it's because you have a need, you have an injury, and you got to bring another guy into the practice squad. You want to see who's the most ready or the best fit, so you'll do that. But that's what Tuesdays are for.
Right. Well, and Handsome Duke makes a good point, is that after a 3-game losing streak, I don't mind hearing from him. And that, I think that's a good thing. He had another impromptu press conference early in the season where the press conferences were done, and then he called the media back in. I got an announcement. I forgot what it was. It was some player personnel move or something like that, and he didn't want the media to think that that they were hiding it from the media and waited to make the move after the press conferences. So he is a little bit different, I guess, in accessibility, and the more the merrier, but I totally understand your point of view, Greg.
Well, I took it this way, is that Flus made a big deal out of the mini buy. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. We got 11 days to do something, and we're going to do something, and we're going to do a lot of things. We're totally reevaluating this football team, what we're doing schematically, how we're calling plays. We're evaluating each and every player, and see what they do wrong, see what they do good, and try to improve that. We're extending individual time and practices on Wednesday and Thursday, or last week it was Thursday and Friday, so we can work on those. So to me, when Ryan decided to talk Monday night, it was really a follow-up to what Flus's plan was, because I guarantee you that wasn't just Flus's plan. That was Flus's and Pole's plan.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it was something to do in conjunction with Flus.
You mentioned that you wanted to talk about Braxton Jones, and I'm glad you are, because the chat room is on fire with Braxton Jones comments. So what do you think about his play? Again, this is a 5th round draft pick, was tried out at the left tackle position. They liked what they saw in camp and have kept him there. They have not moved him. I doubt that he's played many other positions prior to the start of the season. They kind of liked him at left tackle and left him there.
Well, that's what he was in college. And it's funny. I wrote an article for Windy City Gridiron today, and it was about the title of it, and I don't remember, Lester might have changed the title a little bit, but basically, what happened that they took 2 defensive backs with the first 2 picks. Why wasn't a receiver in there? So what I did with that article is trying to explain the process of how, you set up a board, but, and I said, hypothetically, they could have gone into that draft that day thinking, or really during the first round, because you're watching how players come off the board during the first round, thinking, okay, this guy or this receiver could be there. And if that's the case, we're going to do it. But you go according to your board. Okay. And I explained, okay, you could have at that point using our old system. And I didn't use the entire system because there's a lot of numbers in it, but the main numbers would say, when you're getting to that high second round where they took Kyler Gordon, the grade we would have had on a player at that point would have been like an A67 if he was like the 35th ranked player, like, where Gordon was drafted to 38, something like that. And so that's the level of player you were looking at. But if the draft falls in a way that there's a 68 sitting there, you have to take the 68. He's a level higher than the 67.
Right.
And you got to follow it. And as it turned out, that could be, one of the reasons why you took 2 defensive backs and not taking a receiver. Now, the other part of that is that in your draft meetings leading up, and you spend 3 weeks to a month putting that board together.
Mm-hmm.
After you get all the information, so it's not like it's done in 2 days.
Right.
You spend a lot of time, and you spend as much time on rounds 5, 6, and 7 as you do on round 1.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that's all you do is round 1, and then the rest is hodgepodge. No, you're spending a lot of time on day 3 guys and day 2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you have a grouping of 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
You got an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a receiver, and a defensive back. They all got the same grade. In your meetings, the way you stack them on the board is you prioritizing the player. They're the same level player. But if all 4 of these guys are there, I'm taking this guy over this guy over this guy over this guy. It's been discussed. It's not like it's a draft day decision. Yeah, you're going to revisit it on draft day, because once you get into the draft, you're seeing how players are coming off the board,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to start to anticipate, okay, so what was Jaquan? Jaquan was like, the 48th player or something like that in the draft. When they get around 43, 44, they're starting to think, this guy's going to be there, this guy's going to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then sometimes it goes, oh shit! Your guys come off 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's happened to me. But you start looking. Okay, we're going to get a shot at this, and that's how sometimes when you get into the second, third, and fourth round, how trades come into play, because there might be somebody you really love. I got to have this guy, and then you overreact and you move up to get him. When sometimes you don't have to. You could just sit and wait, and he's going to fall in your lap.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm trying to make is let's say they had a receiver there and Jaquan, and they decided we're going with Jaquan over the receiver. Mm-hmm. And another part of that equation is you look at the depth of the positions. How many guys? How deep is the safety position in the draft? How deep is the corner position in this draft? Can I get a good corner on day 3?
All right.
A guy who I think is going to come in and be a starter versus a receiver, where the receiver position was extremely deep.
Mm-hmm.
And there's guys, who came in or being productive players as rookies that went in the 3rd and 4th round. And this next draft, receiver position is going to be ultra deep again too. So you got to compare. All that stuff goes into the thing. And the last thing I'll say about that before we get on to Braxton
mm-hmm.
is Pickens had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before. I know of at least a half a dozen teams that he was off their board. Not a criminal. He's a pain in the ass. He's a selfish, me first player. You might even say he's a young Antonio Brown type personality, the type that can rub people the wrong way, be a cancer in the locker room. I had one GM told me, he said my scouts would have mutinied if I tried to take that guy.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And he goes, I love the talent.
Mm-hmm.
And you do, and you got to balance that stuff. But and Pittsburgh, who ended up taking Pickens, Kevin Colbert was still running that draft. That's his last draft. And, I've known Kevin going back to 1984. And Kevin's had success taking guys like that
mm-hmm.
because, and part of the reason is he's got such a strong veteran locker room. And so he figures that, like Brown went late
mm-hmm.
because issues.
Right.
It's Central Michigan. He was a pain in the ass. And there were, things about his background that, were red flags. And so teams passed. There's a lot of people knew that he was a 2nd round talent.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, Pittsburgh did a great thing or a great job scouting. They just said, hey, at this point, we're going to take them regardless. And we can bring them along. And they did for a while. But finally, it just started to explode and they couldn't, the bullshit he pulls in the locker room just goes on and on and on. And then you got to get rid of the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame. He is a great talent, but when you have a general manager who is basically blowing everything up and wants to rebuild the culture of this team and wants people to buy into the Hits philosophy, if you bring in a player who could potentially derail that with some of his behavior, or just make it difficult for other players to buy in because he may not be buying in, then it's a good idea to forego that talent, particularly if you've got guys on your board that you've ranked high or as high. So I'm totally with you on that approach. So
let me say this too.
Sure.
Is okay. Granted, you could argue. I'll say that I was going to say it one way. I'm going to say it a different way. You could argue, okay, they didn't get guys to help Justin Fields. Well, you can reverse that argument and say, what helps Justin Fields more? Another receiver or a strong defense that prevents the other team from scoring?
I love it. Yep.
So now, okay, we don't have to score 33 to win. We might win with 17 because our defense is good. Yep. And, good DBs are worth their weight in gold.
Man, you ain't kidding.
And I think, I think those two picks were excellent picks. People might have done. So other people might have done differently, but I know the reasoning, and I tried to write that today. Why it happens. If they want to agree, fine. If they don't, fine. Now to get into Braxton. Braxton's a 5th round pick. Mm-hmm. When you look at his workout numbers, now he did some of the stuff over at his pro day because his 3-cone was good, but it wasn't great. But then he does that's about the only thing he redid was the 3 day, and he ran like a 7.4, and a 7.4 for a 310-pound guy is not a good time. It's a great time, and you compare that with his jumps. His speed, he's a sub-5 flat at 310 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's rare, okay? And he's got 35-inch arms. He's got a strong upper body. He needs work, I think, in his lower body strength, and he'll get that. In one off season, he'll get a lot stronger. One off season than a pro weight room. Now, this kid comes from Southern Utah. It's an FCS level school. He didn't have a weight room situation even close to a MAC level, let alone Big Ten, Southeast Conference, and then the NFL. Mm-hmm. He's not getting the coaching that those people are getting. A lot of it, hell, he's just doing on his own. It's instinct. So, he never played against guys that, the level he's playing against now, go down. What's FCS? That's like 3 levels below the NFL. You've got like the Power 5 schools. Then you got your mid-majors like the MAC and the Sun Belt and the American Conference and things. And then he's FCS. And really Southern Utah, when you compare it to some of the other FCS conferences, that's in the lower rung of the FCS level. It's almost high Division II. So this guy comes in. I guarantee you they didn't think they were getting a starter this year. They probably looked at the traits and he really held his own at the Senior Bowl and said he's going to be an eventual starter, but he's raw and he's going to need some time. But those raw traits just jumped out right away. And now you look at it, we got to play this guy. I mean, I think they signed Reef going into camp to play that position. Mm-hmm. But then when they saw what this guy could do, even though Reef could probably do it better early in the season, the best way to get this guy to a high level is to put him in the fire. Let him learn. Yeah. Is he going to get your guy hit a couple times? Yep. Is he going to get beat by some good guys? Yep. And he's played against some of the best already. Hell, he's only played, what are they? What's their records? 3-4, 7 games.
Right.
And he's already played against some really good pass rushers.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been brought to school, and every day he goes against a pretty good one in Quinn.
What do you think about Cornelius's prediction here that he thinks Braxton is going to do well against Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys because he has problems with power and not speed?
I think Parsons is a rare cat. He's one of the best to come in the league in a long time, and he gives the best a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he's going to have a problem with Parsons, but I guarantee you that when they do their game plan, you might see a tight end on that left side a lot,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, to help.
I hope so.
You know, so that's part of what you do in game planning and scheming is, you know, you see where but then the thing with Parsons is they line him up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, you know, he's off the ball linebacker. He's rushing from the right side. He's rushing from the left side. Mm-hmm. So you got to almost see where he's lined up. It's like we got to get to the line of scrimmage with 20 seconds left on the clock, because we might have to adjust our protection depending on where he's lined up.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people in the chat are saying, you know, my biggest concern with this offensive line right now is the right tackle, Larry Borum. One person in the chat room saying he's in his second year and I'm not really seeing progress like I'm seeing out of Braxton Jones. What do you think about Larry Borum?
I like Larry Borum. That's another situation where you just he's going to be a good functional tackle. He's never going to be a Pro Bowler. But again, he needs to play. He got taken to lunch a couple times Monday night. He went against a pretty good football player Monday night. Mm-hmm. And a lot of teams put their best pass rusher on the defensive left side because the offensive right tackle is generally your weaker pass blocker among your tackles. Mm-hmm. It's a reason for it. So it's the same thing with Jones. You know, could they try to upgrade the position in the offseason? Of course they could. Mm-hmm. But it depends, you know, who is it they're taking versus who else is available, unless you go out in free agency and sign somebody. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that, you know, once we get through the season. And people want to overreact to one game or 2 games. And in this season, you got to look at the whole season. And we can look at what this team was week 1, week 2. And week 1, I don't count. Hell, they're playing in a monsoon. Mm-hmm. Okay, so week 2 to week 3, now we've played 7 games. And you're seeing some things better. Okay, Borum, yeah, he got beat a couple times the other night. But there's games that he's played pretty damn good too. Mm-hmm. You know, so you got to put it all together, and you watch this group as a whole grow. And now it's okay, what are they doing games 14, 15, 16? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, if you see that the arrow's going up with some of these guys, some of them, you know, level out or the arrow starts, their play drops off. Yeah. Then it's like, hey, we've already seen their ceiling. It's time to move on, and we got to upgrade that position next year. But that's what you do, you know, late in the year and in January after the season's over. Now, you know, you review. That's what the pro department does. That's what the coaches do. You know, they review their team. The coach will say right now, I don't think we can win with this guy. And that's the key word, win. Mm-hmm. Can we win with this player?
That is the key phrase everybody should ask themselves when they look at this roster of the Chicago Bears. But also don't look at it as, can we win with him now? Look at him, can this player develop and we can win in a year or two? Not to say that we're out of the playoff race. By the way, Greg, do you think we have a chance to make the playoffs? Wild card?
Well, the way the NFC's going, I guess
Exactly.
nothing's out of the question. It'd be imperative, number one, that you win this week.
Yeah.
Okay. I think 7 losses might get you in as the last wild card.
Yeah.
It was like that last year. Last year you had a division winner that sucked,
Yeah.
but but you might have a 9-7 team get in, and it's not going to be that way in the AFC, but in the NFC, I think you could have a 9-7 team get in. That doesn't mean, I guess, don't make the playoffs fool you that the team is better than they are. It's still going to be a work of progress. And get back to Braxton Jones, I want to point. He's got some rare traits. He's got some natural traits that first and second round offensive linemen have. What he didn't have is the pedigree, the big school, the great coaching, coming from that, a better school, things like that. The athleticism is equal to premium round guys. Now it's just learn to play. Now he's basically played, he's not a rookie anymore. He's gone through 7 games, 3 preseason games. He played a lot in preseason. So he's played in 10 NFL games now. He's learned a lot. And you're going to start seeing him. Yeah, he's going to get beat sometimes, but you're going to start seeing him, my opinion anyway, that he's going to keep ascending. And that next year you're going to have a hell of a pretty damn good player there on the left side.
All right, let's tackle some questions here because we've got a few of them. Let's get back to the trade topic. Foster asks that he says, I could see trading Quinn and possibly Whitehair due to his contract. I would imagine that no one would want to try to trade for Whitehair given his injury status. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you don't know what the injury is. You're not going to. Well, a team could know he's hurt and say, okay, we're going to put him on IR. I don't think, I'd have to check into this one because I don't remember on the rules. I don't think you can trade a guy on IR. So he'd have to be off of IR. Okay. He can't come off of IR until next week. And the trade deadline is Tuesday?
Correct.
He can come off Monday, I think.
Interesting.
I think we don't know how bad Patrick got hurt. And so I cannot see Cody Whitehair going. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I don't see anybody getting traded.
Yeah, I'm kind of
even Quinn. One of the reasons being Quinn's a leader within the group. And that same thing, trade Monty. He's coming out of contract. Monty is a co-captain. And that says a lot about how the teammates feel about the guy. And so it's not only trading a player, but it's trading somebody that's important in your locker room. And what message are you sending to your locker room if you trade the guy? Because none of the other guys are going, what the fuck do I got to do?
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot that comes into play. It's not just as simple as I'm going to trade player A because I can get a couple draft choices. Well, you're going to, if you let, in Quinn's case, he's not going to become a free agent. So, you could trade him next season in the offseason. Could he go? Yes. As far as next week. Will he? I think it's less than 50-50.
Yeah.
I think that the team you see today is the same team you're going to see a week from today.
Yeah. The
day after the trade deadline.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Then what would happen to the morale? I mean, the team in the locker room, they love Robert Quinn. They love his quiet leadership. They love the fact that he wants to be here in Chicago. He's not interested in being moved, and they still want to fight for a playoff spot. And so if you trade Quinn for draft picks, that's really going to be disruptive to the morale of this team. So I'm kind of with you. I unless Ryan Poles gets a call that is an astronomical offer for Quinn or anyone on this team, I don't see them making a move.
Well, some people have told me, and I've talked to quite a bit of agents, and I do some work for one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these guys say, he doesn't get moved. There's no talk. There's nothing we're hearing. That what you hear is media talk. But, from the people that really know,
mm-hmm.
they're not hearing anything. Now, part of that is, there's two ways you can look at that. Part of it is they're not going to move them. The other part is what Poles is saying. Well, if you want him, you got to blow my socks off with an offer,
mm-hmm.
because I'm not giving him away for a fourth.
Right.
Hell, I might not give him away for a third.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what his numbers are this year. He had 18.5 last year, and he played pretty damn good. He's getting pressures, and he played pretty damn good on Monday night.
Yes, he did. All right, Jordan has a question for you. He says he would love to know why you think so much of the team seems like a meritocracy, yet we see Al-Qadim Muhammad, number 55, trotted out there every week when Gibson is undoubtedly more disruptive. What say you, Mr. Gabriel?
Well, number one, Muhammad played for Flus for a number of years in Indianapolis, so Flus knows exactly what he is. Not only did he play for Flus, he played for pretty much that whole defensive staff except the defensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
Williams is over there, so they know what he can do. He's never going to be a double-digit sack guy. He's a 5 to 8 max sack guy. He's always played in a rotation, but he's a consistent player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you look, they play a pretty strict rotation. Perfect example last week. Second series, the first series, defensive series, there was one group of defensive linemen in. The second series, there's another.
Mm-hmm.
And because I noticed that kind of jumped out. Quinn was out. All those guys were out. Gibson, I think, I looked at the numbers. I don't remember the exact numbers. But Gibson probably at the end of the day gets a few more snaps than Muhammad, or it's pretty equal. Mm-hmm. And that's what they want to do. And there's things that Gibson can do. I think in important pass downs situations, you see Gibson in there more than Muhammad. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to really go back and study the tape. But I know the philosophy that they're playing with, and they want their good guys
mm-hmm.
ready for the fourth quarter.
Right.
I'll go back and now the Bears don't have anybody at the same level. Now I'm gone brain dead. The Bills sack guy that they signed in free agency from the Rams, who was with Denver. What's the guy? Help me, Aldo.
Oh my goodness.
Von Miller. Okay. Von Miller plays like 38% of the downs.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it has to do with his age. But last week, when they had a big game against Kansas City, or now 2 weeks ago, last week they were in the bye,
mm-hmm.
jumped up to, he was in the game like 65%. They got him for the fourth quarter and key situations and big games.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to wait. He's 32 years old. They know exactly what he is, and they got him for key situations. So they're not going to waste him in games they're blowing out opponents, and they're going to rotate him. and they're going to keep his snap level down so that when they get into January in the playoffs, they're going to, he's still going to have some freshness to him. He's not going to be worn down.
And according to Pro Football Reference, Mohammed is playing 58% of the snaps. And where's my guy here? I saw him at 43.9% as Travis Gibson. So it's not a huge disparity there. And I got a feeling that as the season goes on, you might see Gibson play more and more snaps. So
and there's times when they have Mohammed inside in pass rush situations. Yeah. Or they have, I've seen Gibson inside. So it depends on the situation. And in the NFL today, you're looking for matchups. You want to win matchups, and so you as you're reviewing the film going into the game and you're setting up your game plan, you've got an idea. Okay, if I do this in nickel situation, I can put Al-Qadim Mohammed at defensive tackle on third and long and win. That type of thing is what they do. So, but the following week, you say, no, that matchup isn't going to work because they might have might be like you're playing the Colts and you got Nelson playing inside. And so, that one isn't going to work regardless of who you put inside.
Right. Yeah, I got to tell you, it's weird. We fans can be really weird sometimes. Khalil Herbert, is playing well. And so automatically people are saying, well, trade David Montgomery or start Herbert over Montgomery and so forth. I don't understand that thinking. I think that the way these running backs are getting playing time is absolutely perfect. Just look at the numbers. But Sam Rush does have a good question. And where did I do it? He asks, why don't the Bears default to Monty in the red zone throughout the game, even on Herbert's series? He's the power back, better pass protector, and the better pass catcher. And I wonder that too. Once you're inside the 10-yard line, why do you have Herbert in?
That's a good question. I agree. I'm going to say not necessarily inside the 10, but inside the 5. Okay, because Monty's a pretty good between the tackle, even between the guards.
Oh yeah,
runner. Okay, and he gets a lot of yardage after contact. So yeah, you'd want the more powerful guy. I think part of it has to do with what the play call is too. If you're going to be running outside, then if your play call is really an outside type of run, then you're going to want Herbert in there because he's got more speed to the edge. Somebody has here, Herbert's better than Montgomery. That's debatable. They're two entirely different kinds of backs. One is a good open field runner. He's got a lot of speed. His after contact ability is actually better probably than they anticipated. But one thing Herbert can't do, and is imperative that you can do in this league, Herbert is a shitty pass blocker right now. And until he becomes and Montgomery's a very good pass blocker, until he become a good pass blocker, and I don't say very good, you can't be trusted to be an every down back. You got to be, and let's face it, very few teams have a bell cow running back anymore.
That's right.
You're using 2 and 3, and in a perfect world, all 2 or 3 got different types of traits. And in this case, between Monty and Herbert, they aren't close to being similar. So that helps the Bears' offense because your opponent has to prepare for 2 different styles of runners.
We're going to have to circle back with Chubbs to have a longer discussion because he really believes that Herbert is the better back, and part of his rationale is Herbert offers more explosive plays than David Montgomery. But there's a lot that goes into that thinking, and I actually would challenge the amount of explosive plays. I think Montgomery has had quite a few, and not just the one that Chubbs is alluding to.
There was about an 8-yard run, 9-yard run the other night by Monty. That was as good a run as you'll see in any game.
Yeah.
And where he very easily could have been hit for a 2-yard loss on that one particular play. And I don't know if you remember the play I'm talking about.
Yes.
But he bounced off a bunch of people. And all of a sudden, he looks like he stopped for like no gain. And then he's downfield carrying people. And his after contact power is really high.
I'm glad he's a Chicago Bear. And it was interesting. Ryan Poles was asked about Montgomery's contract, and Poles' response was, David Montgomery is one of my favorite players on this team. So that's some kind of an endorsement. And we heard George McCaskey single out David Montgomery when they had the press conference to announce the regime change. So who knows? David Montgomery wants to play in Chicago. He may take less than the market value for a running back of his status. I wouldn't mind seeing him around for a couple of seasons.
Well, you know what happens in a situation like that? I mean, the agent and obviously the player, but a lot of times it's more the agent because he's doing the negotiation. He wants 4 or 5 year deal.
Yep.
Well, it's ludicrous to give a running back a second contract worth 4 or 5 years. Okay, because and we've talked about it. When they start to drop off, they're not, walking down the stairs slowly. They're taking the express elevator, top floor to the bottom floor, just like that. And the difference between season A to season B can be night and day with a running back. He can drop off that quickly. And there's a lot of history showing that. So if you can get a 2-year extension done, I do that in a heartbeat and give him more money. But I don't know if I'd even want to go 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Only because of the position. You got to be cognizant of that. You got to be aware of how running backs, the history of running backs, and there's some guys that are genetic freaks that might be able to play 8, 9, 10 years, and so they deserve that. But let's be honest, Montgomery's already had some durability issues.
Yes,
he's missed some time. So it's we want you, but we want you at the right price. And if you're willing to do that, you'll be a Chicago Bear for a few more years.
Yeah, you sort of answered this question from Eric. What is your guess on good contract terms for Monty to stay here that works for both sides? So you got to kind of, isn't the key thing here, Greg, is the guaranteed dollars, particularly when you're talking about a guy who's had injury issues?
Yeah, I think so. But you get into that second contract, and especially for a running back, they know, their agent knows, hey, look at my time is limited. I got a short shelf life. So they're looking for as much money guaranteed as they can get.
Yeah.
And that's important because it's going to be, in all probability, his last opportunity to make money. Now, he could stick around and play 10, 11 years in the league.
Right.
But those last few years, he's playing at minimum.
Yeah, this should
minimum isn't too shabby, and minimum is going to be going up where it's not too far in the future where the rookie minimum is going to be over $1 million. So it's not like the guy's getting ready to go on welfare.
That's right. I love Kevin's comment here. He's basically identified the player who is the poster child for against second contracts. Todd Gurley. Look at what happened with Todd Gurley with that second contract with the Rams. Yeah, he took him to the bank.
It happens all the time with running backs. You got to be careful.
That's right. You really
do.
And
I'll tell you right now, San Francisco, that was the dumbest freaking trade I ever saw. Giving up what they gave up for a guy who's had durability issues for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And McCaffrey.
Handsome Duke has a question very early, but he says, which side of the ball would you focus on in the upcoming draft? I know the answer to this question, but you are.
I'll be honest with you. Tell me what they're going to do in free agency.
There you go.
Because I repeat it almost every week. What you do in the draft has a direct correlation with what you previously did in free agency. Mm-hmm. It's your two areas where you try to improve your team and acquire new personnel. So, they've got money. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people. Get some people pissed off at me now. We have 115 million or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they're anticipating that he's going to go wild with that money. I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't happening. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't get what he thinks is a fair deal and a good deal for the player he's buying, in other words, he's not going to go out and overpay by $3 million just to get a name at a player. Like, the receiver from Arizona goes to Jacksonville and he breaks the wide receiver market, just screws up the whole market. And he's not going to do that. Mm-hmm. He'll spend money if it's he doesn't have to spend $115 million next year. Part of that's going to go to, okay, you're going to re-up Roquan. Are you going to re-up Monty? Things of that nature. And you got to have enough because, Justin's going into his third year. Theoretically, you can redo his deal following next season. Mm-hmm. And if he starts to show that, you could do two things. You can redo his deal, or you can pick up the 5th-year option on his contract. But you got to do that. You don't have to do it following his third year as far as the redo of the contract, but you got to determine if you're going to pick up the 5th-year option. So it's they got to have, even though it's next year's cap, you still got to have money. You got to figure out how that money is going to be used for those future contracts 2 years from now and 3 years from now.
That's right. You've got to budget ahead, and there's always ways to manipulate the salary cap, but Ryan Pace did it and created a big hole for Ryan.
That's right. He overspent for a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
A perfect example is two quarterbacks. He brings in one guy, he pays him $18 million, and he lasts like 2 games because he was terrible. Mm-hmm. But most people would have told you he's terrible before he even, tried to bring him in. Then he gives Andy Dalton $5 when he could have, or $10 million when he could have got him for $4.
Yeah.
And you know what? Dalton signing right away for $4 or for $4.5, which would have been a favorite. And he gives him 10. And you can go through a bunch of the deals that he did that were like that. And I don't know if it was him or if it was Joey Lane or a combination of the two. Or it was like, okay, I got to get this guy, so I'm going to overpay. Well, you look at who Ryan Poles has worked for, who's he worked under, and who's he worked with. Those people have been very, very conservative, for the most part, in the free agent market. Now, he could very well, like Jordan said, well, what are they get? How are they going to spend that $100 million? Well, I don't know how you're going to spend it. I'm just saying, I don't see him going out and giving some guy some outrageous amount of money just to get him. He's going to get a guy that's going to be a fit in the locker room. Hey, if it's the right player and he's going to cost you $18, $19, $20 million a year, fine. But he better be the right player. And you don't want to do it for a 29, 30-year-old player. Mm-hmm. You want to do it for a 25-year-old player.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's see if we can tackle one more question before we pull the plug here.
No, we got to talk about Green Bay going to get their ass kicked in Buffalo. I think that's going to be ugly.
Before we get there, Carlos Santos was named Special Teams Player of the Week. Thank you, Taurine, for letting us know that. We don't often talk about special teams, but we know their value. But because they get so few snaps, we overlook them. But the field goal kicker is and field goal with punters and gunners and so forth. These guys are so effing valuable to a team's success. And applause for Santos, who has not missed a kick this season.
He missed a couple extra points in the monsoon game.
That is true. And field goals, though, he is perfect. He's only one, 2 field goal kickers who's perfect in the league. But you're right. I forgot about those extra.
Yeah, but then he also had going back, a couple of years. What do you have? 28 in a row or 30 in a row or something like that? No, he is very, very consistent. I think the special teams as a whole has been very good. I commented on Twitter during the game. First 3 kickoffs to the Patriots, they never got to the 25-yard line. And you use the 25-yard line as a standard because if you just down the ball in the end zone or let it go through the end zone, you're getting the ball at the 25. Mm-hmm. Well, they weren't even getting it to the 20. Mm-hmm. So, if you get it to if they return a kick like they did, I think that their opening return, they got, I think, to the 18-yard line or something like that. That's plus 7 yards for the Bears. And that's one of the ways you grade your special teams. Their coverage units have been very good throughout the year.
Outstanding. All right, let's talk Bills and Packers. The Buffalo is favored by 10.5 points.
It started a little less than that, didn't it? Didn't it start about 9 or something?
I think it opened at 8.5 is where it opened, according.
Yeah, well then Mr. Selfish opened his big mouth yesterday.
Yes, the biggest underdog line of Aaron Rodgers' career. It's not good news for Mr. Rodgers.
Buffalo has won their home games by something like over 30 points.
Mm-hmm.
That team's on a mission. Look what they did in Kansas City. Look at how they did that. These are road games. How they destroyed the Rams in the opening game. Played one bad game, and the heat index on the field was in Miami, and they could have won that game. The heat index on the field was 110. And, it was just one of those days, so to speak. Otherwise, they're just blowing everybody out. And I got a good friend from here who I grew up with in Buffalo. We went to high school together. We've known each other since 10th grade. He's on his way to Buffalo right now. He's taking his whole family. So he's taking his kids and his grandkids. The name's Gary. I don't want to mention his last name.
Okay.
To the game. Now he grew up going to the stadium a lot, going to games. Part of it is he wants his grandkids. He told me, he goes, it was on my bucket list. I want my grandkids to experience the tailgate parties and stuff at Buffalo because it's very unique. Mm-hmm. Their tailgating is huge, and if you saw the parking lot set up, you'd understand why. But I just told him, I said, Gary, it's a night game. You better get there about noon. So, because my daughters go to all the games, and my daughter has this place where she tailgates, and I let Gary know where that is. It's a 10-minute. It's not in the stadium lots, but it's a big, it's somebody's house. It's got a huge yard, and they probably have maybe a dozen cars parked there, and they have, big parties. And he knows where that is, and it's very easy to get out of the stadium. The bad thing about those lots, they're so big, is that it takes you a long time to get out after the game. Where if you're at a remote lot, like at somebody's house, you can be, you win by an hour, just trying to get out. So he may do that, but I'm kind of anxious just for him because he's taken. I think he's got a dozen tickets he bought for the game on Sunday night.
That's going to be a great game because they're going to whip the crap out of Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have absolutely no chance to come away with a victory in that game. A couple of late breaking questions here. Nomad wanted me to ask you about, do you know of any centers that might be available given the Lucas Patrick injury, if he's going to be out for several weeks? And I'll add to that, what do you think of the play of Sam Mustipher on Monday night? And I'll add even more to that, J.C. Tretter, the head of the Players Union, who has not signed a contract with any team, is still out there. Would you take a look at him if you needed a center?
Well, Tretter is out there. He did, quote, retire. I don't know if he turned in his papers, but he did retire when he didn't get a deal.
Yeah, right.
But yes, J.C. Tretter is out there, but how ready is Tretter to play?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's almost like a 4 or 5 part question. First of all, what's Patrick's injury?
Mm-hmm.
And they said on TV toe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, has he got a turf toe and he's going to be out 4 weeks? Is he going to be out 2 weeks? I think we'll know more about that later today, when Flus is very, very vague when it comes to injuries, but if they put him on IR, he's 4 weeks. Now, is there anybody out there? Not really. If there was somebody out there, they'd get him. Now, could you, quote, trade for one? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a possibility. Depending on the depth some teams have at that position. Mm-hmm. And then the other answer to that question is, he said how bad the field was, Soldier Field. The Soldier Field is a 100% different field this year.
Yeah, but his point is that J.C. Tretter complained about the field prior to the new surface, and so that probably did not go over well with the Bears brass, and they probably wouldn't even invite him as a result.
Money talks and bullshit walks.
There you go. I forgive you. Come and help us.
The other thing is Cody Whitehair.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put Cody Whitehair? Did Schofield play at the enough level that you could put Cody Whitehair back at center?
Yeah, and Nomad adds the Dieter Iceland possibility.
Yeah,
seems like, and I know he's been going up against second and third stringers every time we've seen him, but he seems to hold his own against those second and third stringers.
Well, and that's a coaching decision. What do they feel? How do they feel about Dieter Iceland? Do they think if we put him in the game, he can win for us? Because again, I'll go to that key. Can we win with him?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Michael says if they keep Whitehair next year, move him to center. That's an interesting thought.
Patrick's going to be at center. I know people are down on Patrick, but just go get some all 22 and watch him at center the last 2 years. He was the starting center for, I think, all but 4 games over the last 2 seasons for Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do believe that Lucas Patrick is probably having that kind of Robert Quinn first year with the Bears where things just aren't working. It's a kind of snowballing, injuries and having to move from position to position. In 2023, hopefully he'll be healthy and play center all 17 games, and then we'll get to see him at his best. All right, Greg Gabriel, this has been a lot of fun. You got any final words, any words of caution about when the Bears go to the Dallas Cowboys or anything else?
I think this game is this is about a 10-point game too, isn't it? Similar to
yes, 10 points exactly.
I think it's going to be a little closer than that. I think the offensive line is going to have some problems with some of the pass rushers that Dallas has.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the defense is going to keep the guys in it. And Dallas defense got to prepare for Fields. And that because of the way Fields played against New England, he added a little bit element in some of those. They were planned or schemed run versus scrambles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they got to prepare for that. And I think that he's getting more confident throwing the ball. He had a couple awful throws on just little short things where and part of that might have been the slick ball from the fog.
Mm-hmm.
But take away those two throws, he threw the ball pretty damn well the other night. So I think he's getting better. I'm not going to try to predict a winner. Tough place to play down in Dallas, but I don't think Dallas is really a great team.
Mm-hmm.
They're all right, but they got some pretty darn good players on defense.
Well, make sure you are following Greg Gabriel on Twitter. It's Greg Gabe at Greg. and follow the Barroom Network on Twitter. Follow Jordan T. Silvera on Twitter. He does a nice 10 thoughts of the game immediately afterwards. So those are good Twitter follows among the many we have here at the Barroom Network. And just a reminder that at 2 p.m. it's Bar Down Hockey Talk. And then tonight, 2 Bears programs. Buffon 55, we will do a thorough preview of the Dallas Cowboys with RJ Ochoa, the blogger over at Blogging the Boys. And then at 9 p.m., Danny Shimon has selected about over a dozen plays of Justin Fields that we will break down and have some fun looking at his progression. Greg, you are the absolute best. I'll see you next week, brother.
Sounds good, buddy.
Okay,
Talk to you later.